Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Igniting Change to Youth Social Entrepreneurship side event to the United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum 2026. And I'll read you a brief intro. Our background: the Igniting Change to Youth Social Entrepreneurship program empowers youth as drivers of sustainable development. First introduced in 2024 ECOSOC Youth Forum, it laid the foundation for impactful initiatives by conveying youth leaders and public-private partnerships. Transitioning to 2026, the framework, the initiative aligns with the ECOSOC theme of transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions by emphasizing scalable, neuro-inclusive models for long-term impact. This year's event is convened by a dynamic coalition dedicated to dismantling the systematic inclusion of youth from economic and decision-making spaces. We have here as guests today and our panelists, Agora Leadership Program, led by Robert Payne, a senior U.S. Army officer and strategist. Agora cultivates high-impact leaders by bridging academic rigor with real-world practice. It empowers youth to translate complex challenges into actionable strategies. We also, in collaboration partnership with CUFA, which is Central Única das Favelas in Brazil, which is the world's largest social entrepreneurship, the largest NGO focused in youth social entrepreneurship, currently present in 67 countries and trying to reach 100 countries by the end of 2026. We also have a Bach Sorriso Institute, which is a 100% volunteer-driven NGO providing free medical, dental care, and health education to hard-to-reach coastal communities, aiming to build autonomy and sustainability, and replicates this model worldwide. We also have the participation of Frankie Raffaelli, being represented here today by Tom Chernick. I hope I got your name right. As a visionary impact investor, social formidable blend of financial acumen and deep philanthropic commitment. Following a 13-year tenure as senior VP of trading at Trillium Trading, he pivoted the pioneer sustainable enterprises. As co-founder of CoFeed, he created a corporate model integrating profitable operations with charitable impact, notably championing the hiring of neurodivergent individuals. Currently serving on the executive board of Variety Boys and Girls Club of Queens, he is spearheading a $300 million development for youth and affordable housing. His ability to bridge capital markets with grassroots equity makes him the ideal architect for our financial literacy model. The primary objective is to equip young leaders with the technological, financial, and leadership tools required to shape a sustainable future, directly advancing the SDGs under the review at Hunt Hill Farm 2026 High-Level Political Forum. The focus now is SDG number 9, which we're going to be focusing on: industry, innovation, and infrastructure. To build inclusive innovation ecosystems, we're expanding the Youpreneur Lab and the Arts and Technology Empowerment Program. These initiatives provide zero-cost training in immersive 3D technologies, ideal for highly functional autistic youth, and retail incubation, driving digital inclusion and resilient local industries. SDG number 17, which is partnerships for the goal. To ensure these youth ventures are scalable and sustainable, Frankie Raffaelli leads a comprehensive financial literacy module, bridging grassroots youth initiatives with private funding. This model equips young entrepreneurs with vital skills in debt sustainability, portfolio diversification, and capital allocation. Leaving no one behind. Integrating Bach Sorriso's mission of health autonomy with CUFA's global reach and Agora's leadership framework, we aim to dismantle participation barriers for youth and LDCs, LLDs, and SIDS, and marginalized communities, ensuring neurodiversity and accessible pathways remain at the core of the 2030 agenda. This interactive side event bridges grassroots entrepreneurial initiatives with global financial frameworks to translate youth engagement into formal policy influence. Grounded in the principle of leaving no one behind, the program prioritized neurodivergent youth, marginalized groups, and young people in LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. I will start introducing our panelists today and our guests. Mayor Pete Bass from the town of Milford will be a little late because he is finalizing another event and will join us soon. But I will start introducing a young man. His name is Michael J. O'Hare. He's a discussant here. He's a youth leader and part of the Agora Youth Leadership Program. Michael, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael O'Hare. I'm 17 years old and a senior at Immaculate High School. You know, when people think about leadership, they might picture someone who's the loudest in the room or the most dominant, but my experiences have shown me that real leadership comes from leading yourself first. Growing up, I faced challenges from a serious chronic illness, and they required a lot of discipline and consistency to maintain. Later on, I joined my high school track and cross country teams to rebuild and strengthen my health. At first, it was really difficult, but eventually, through a lot of discipline and consistency, I improved. And that process taught me my first real lesson in self-leadership, which is that real progress comes from showing up, even when it's hard. At the end of my junior year, I was named co-captain of my team, and to prepare for this, I joined the Agora Leadership Development Program, which came at no cost, and there I developed 5 key principles: thinking critically, communicating like a leader, planning and executing with discipline, maintaining physical and mental health, and most importantly, leading through service. And when I applied these principles throughout the seasons, our team rapidly improved, we became much more consistent, and we connected so much more. So, what I've learned is this: self-leadership is a foundation for all leadership. It requires discipline, self-awareness, and a strong commitment. And knowing who you are as a person allows you to connect with more people and unite on common goals, which is exactly what Sustainable Developmental Goal 17, or also known as Partnerships and Financing, is about. And I believe that if more people focus on leading themselves, we won't just develop better leaders, we'll build stronger communities and a more responsible future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephanie Swalt. She's a panelist here. She's an expert in special needs and social emotional learning. And she's also the director of special needs and social emotional learning for Hunt Hill Farm Trust, the accredited NGO to the ECOSOC. Dr. Swalt, please introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Swalt, and I've been working with the special needs population since, I can't believe it, since 1995. Wow, that really shows my age. And it's a genuine love. And I'll be talking about inclusion of neurodivergent individuals and what that really means, as opposed to what we see a lot happening now. And I thank you for the opportunity to do that here.
Oh my God, thank you for joining us. It's a tremendous pleasure to have you. It's an honor, honestly. I also like to introduce Gabriela Alessandra Payne. She is a member of the Agora Youth Leadership Program and a discussant here in our side event today. Gabriela, please introduce yourself.
My name is Gabriella Payne. I'm a junior in high school, president of my own limited liability company, a first-generation immigrant, and a proud military child. Leadership has been a constant topic throughout my life. We see examples of leadership every day, whether that be a boss, a political figure, or something as simple as a team captain. However, my generation is experiencing a crisis in leadership. With the lack of proper examples of what to follow, we will be left to navigate a world completely novel to us without a lighthouse guiding the way through the fog, making recession inevitable. That is why I personally resonate with the objective, leave no man behind. A leader should embody 3 key qualities. Responsibility. A leader needs to be able to take responsibility for themselves, for their entity, and for their followers. Too often do we seek to pass blame onto others to free ourselves of the burden that comes with responsibility. Discipline. A leader needs to be disciplined, whether that be in how they conduct themselves publicly, how they speak, their lifestyles. A leader needs to be an example to follow. They need to practice what they preach, and they need to inspire future generations so that they can aspire to be the same. And finally, humility. A leader needs to acknowledge when they fall short and find the right people to fill in those gaps to achieve the best results possible. They need to acknowledge that they're not the most important person in the world. Their ego isn't what the world revolves around, and that their success is directly tied to the followers that put them in that position. A leader needs to be a servant at heart, continuously putting the needs of others before their own. I have had the privilege of joining the Agora, who have empowered me not to view my youth as a roadblock, but instead a tool for my success. They've taught me the necessity and the importance of these qualities of leadership, not just in my own life, but in the world around me. Once this becomes normal in society, once our predecessors deign to pass down their knowledge to their successors, we will finally see the results we seek and the world we envision for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriela. So now I would like to introduce to you Ana Luisa Becerra. Ana is a scientist, a social entrepreneur, and the founder and CEO of SDW. Her journey began at just 15 years old when she started developing sustainable technologies to tackle the global sanitation crisis. Recognized by the United Nations as a young champion of the earth, Ana Luisa has dedicated her life to ensuring that treated water reaches every community in need. To date, her innovations have impacted over 50,000 lives. She currently serves as a member of the Veolia Future Generations Council and as the global advisor for water issues for the president of Hunt Hill Farm Trust. Ana Luisa leverages these global platforms to transform strategic connections into real impact, working towards a future where waterborne diseases are extinct and safe water is guaranteed right for all. Ana Luisa, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. I could definitely see that I would be amazing to participate to the Agora program. I hadn't had this chance back when I was a teenager, and I began my journey as a scientist. And definitely, I could see that when I was 15 years old and I started this journey, I was a very shy person. My only focus was to reach the people that I wanted to serve with a technology that now is called Aqualus. It's a solar disinfection system for treating rainwater using just the sun. And it was a very, very difficult journey, and I needed to have all the skills that these young, my colleagues, young colleagues, soon I won't be that young. I'm 28 right now, but I've been in this journey for 13 years, so I learned a lot. I need to become all of this and also resilient, because still young people are not very given the right opportunities. people don't really believe in our potential, and I could become a more focused person that believe in my power to do something important. Definitely, that was the most important thing that made me don't give up on this challenge, to be able to live a day where no one else will be sick or die because of unsafe water consumption. That journey made me one of the Young Champion of the Earth by UN. Definitely, that was one of my most prestigious moments. But I know that sometimes we speak about water problems, global issues, and we learn about the data. Right now, 2.1 billion people lack access to safe water. But in this journey, I learned that the most important thing is to learn about the story of the people behind these stories. Like a family that I know, Maria, it's a mother of 3 kids, and she lost one of their youngest kids because she didn't have access to clean water, because she needed to give water for the baby, and it was contaminated water. And that's the story not only for Maria, but of a lot of mothers that I saw, and that I learned that it's not just about the data; it's about the every person behind of the story, every person that doesn't have the possibility to dream of a better life because they need to have water, they need to fetch water, they need to take care of the children that are sick, and a lot of different perspectives of what we are right now. So I now with a team of 17 people, all of them very passionate about our purpose, and we have been able to achieve 50,000 people, not only in Brazil, but in Puerto Rico and Ecuador, with an average of 92% of reduction of waterborne disease. And the most important thing, a data that we know that is the most important for everyone to know, the social return of investment. Each dollar invests in our technologies, in our projects, that right now is not just about Aqualuz. We have 8 different technologies. But with every dollar invested, we can save up to $27 in not only health, but education, good quality of life for those families. And then they can be able to dream about a better future for the kids, a better future for the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much. Appreciate for your interest. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And came so fast when we invited you. I appreciate that. So the next I'd like to introduce is Hunt Hill Farms Youth Ambassador, Allison Daniel. She's been with us for 3 years. She's a fantastic entrepreneur since she was 6. Allison, please introduce yourself, and we'll have a lot of time to talk.
Excellencies and distinguished guests, my name is Allison Daniel, and I'm in 11th grade at Immaculate High School. And I am so honored to be here today and have an opportunity to speak as the Silo's UN NGO's Youth Goodwill Ambassador, a young social entrepreneur, an artist, and an Agora Leadership Development Programs Ambassador. As the owner of Allison's Unique Treasure and Hunt Hill Farms Youth Ambassador since 2022, I embody the UN Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG number 8, decent work and sustainable economic growth, by working to help transform my creativity and use it to help provide real opportunities for our communities. I am also passionate about SDG number 9 and number 12, and I want to be able to bring my vision and designs global with sustainable solutions while utilizing my leadership skills. With SDG number 9, Industry, Innovation, and Infrastructure, I want to help modernize aging infrastructure using sustainable materials. For SDG number 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, with my resin business experience, I have reduced, reused, and found ways of recycling materials. I also find ways to repurpose them. All materials have a life cycle, especially construction materials, and I'm looking into reducing the carbon footprint of concrete and steel. I've been looking at colleges, and I resonate with Cornell, especially Cornell's Engineers for a Sustainable World, ESW. an organization that was actually founded at Cornell and is committed to forging innovative, lasting solutions for local and global sustainability challenges. I would love to help the youth of tomorrow by having and leading by example, sharing my story. With my years of experience as a young social entrepreneur, I have also envisioned an event for the youth and by the youth. The purpose is to inspire the youth and give them a real opportunity at no upfront cost. Kids get inspired by other kids. To grow a network of young entrepreneurs where they can support each other and build each other up would be incredible. Alessandro and the board of the Silo and Hunt Hill Farm have approved and supported the Youth Arts and Flavors Festival, which is being held May 16th from 12 to 16 p.m. Everyone is invited to attend, and anyone under 18 years old or younger is welcome to participate. This is a way to empower the youth. Although we are working on building a youth fund in order to be able to provide them with the tools and resources as needed, we are also working on offering programs like financial literacy workshops so they can learn how to manage their finances, learn to invest, and grow in their funds and businesses. It is amazing to offer this training so that kids can learn certain skill sets and open their minds to creativity. Thank you, Alessandro, for the opportunity to be here today, and I am looking forward to working with you and all the UN youth social entrepreneurship programs and helping in any way that I can.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here with us so long, and see you grow within the network and how you're evolving is really inspiring. So now I'd like to introduce one of our next panelists, which is Bobby Payne, the founder of the Agora NGO. And Bob, please introduce yourself.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me here. This is a wonderful opportunity. I'm very grateful to you and to the United Nations for putting this on and allowing Agora to come and be part of it. I am Robert Payne, a co-founder and president of Agora Leadership Development Program. And when Alessandro and I were talking about gaps in youth entrepreneur development, leadership was one of those gaps. So I'm very humbled that Agora could be part of today's program. I brought some statistics here that I think speak to the need for leadership development, specifically SDG number 4 within the framework we're talking about today. According to Springboard's 2024 Workforce Skill Gap Report, 70% of corporate leaders today report critical skill gaps in their organizations, one that is actively hurting businesses' performance and return on investment. Research from ExecLearn shows that 77% of organizations lack sufficient leadership depth at all levels. This means they can't promote from within. They have to hire from outside, people who don't know their culture and don't know their people, which takes time to build within their internal leadership. That's a gap. And then when we look at the specific competencies companies need most, Brimco's leadership statistics reveal that only 12% of current leaders self-report being competent in the 5 core leadership capabilities expected of them. All this is to say, this isn't a problem that corporate America can fix. It's not something that's going to be fixed overnight. It's something that requires deliberate effort with our younger generation to cultivate these young minds into leaders we need tomorrow. I am very much a believer that artificial intelligence, while being fantastic in capability, will never replace human intelligence in the need for leadership. Leadership's about people and relationships, not managing processes. Artificial intelligence might manage our processes fantastically, but it's going to take people working together to solve the real problems of tomorrow. And Agora seeks to do that by cultivating young leaders today. It's a preventative investment on our future so that when I'm old and on Social Security and I need a good community to live in, I've got some leaders here who are preparing that community for me to enjoy those golden years of my life. Thank you.
It sounds beautiful. Thank you, Bobby. We're looking forward to hear a lot more about you. So now I'd like to introduce another one of our panelists, and here representing Frankie Raffaelli and also a new member of the Hunt Hill Farm Trust team and family, Tom Chernick. Chernick? Tom, please introduce yourself. And
very, thank you for having me here. Very glad to join. Unfortunately, Frank couldn't make it here today, but I'll speak partly on his behalf, partly on mine. Frank and I have worked together for the past dozen years or so. We met through common goals, both through our families and through interests that we had, both as entrepreneurs and as philanthropists, but really people who like to give back into communities. And the work that Frank had done, in particular around Coffeed, making cafes and places for people to gather, making sure that those contributed back into important charitable and other philanthropic goals was a very important one. And one of those initiatives was building a rooftop farm in Queens that really inspired particular people who grew up in the city like myself to really have an appreciation for and a love of things that come from the earth, and the sustainability of growing food, harvesting food, and feeding people through those efforts. And that then translated into Frank and I working on a number of different business efforts together. Much of my work, although I've led innovation in multiple industries and sectors for many years, much of my work is actually now giving back and working with other entrepreneurs to help guide them through the process, whether that's very early and finding their path and taking an early idea, turning that into a concept that becomes a business, or taking a business that has not quite found its way or needs to redirect and guiding them to that. And what's ended up happening out of those efforts has been this incredible culmination of efforts that comes here to Hunt Hill Farm. And in addition to Frank's involvement in Yale and you mentioned the Variety Boys and Girls Club. The Variety Boys and Girls Club is a boys and girls club based in Long Island City, Queens, where Frank has done a lot of work. It's an incredible organization that works within a quite impoverished area within Queens that is within view of Manhattan, but often overlooked. And the work that's gone into that club, the community that it's built around there has been really incredible. And things like the Sky Farm that was built as part of that, and programs that we continue to work on and expand today are all part of this effort. And I think it's interesting to come at the end of these introductions, because I think everyone here touched on different parts that are so important in all of this, and that true leadership comes from within, but is then expressed within our larger communities. And I think in all of these introductions, we heard portions of that. And what we're hoping to do here at Hunt Hill Farm and together with the UN is to really start expanding on those efforts. We have the blessing of having this incredible, inspiring space that has deep history in many different regards. And it gives us the opportunity to convene people, to have them focus in on innovation and helping others and bringing those efforts together and amplifying them so that we can change the world.
Well, thank you. Well said. Very well done. And so now we're going to start. We have 3 guiding questions that the UN wants us to focus. The first one, we're going to go into to drive actionable outcomes and intergenerational dialogue. We will address. Number 1 is innovation, SDG number 9. How can digital transformation and inclusive innovation ecosystems be leveraged to accelerate youth entrepreneurship and build resilient local industries? The second one is partnerships and financing, SDG number 17. What collaborative models best leverage public and private funding to scale youth-led solutions? And how can financial literacy programs ensure these ventures remain sustainable? And number 3 is leadership and inclusion. How can we create accountable pathways that translates grassroots youth engagement into meaningful influence on policy, particularly for neurodivergent youth and marginalized communities in LDCs and SIDSs? Any of our discussants would like to ask a question to any of our panelists in any one of the 3 topics? If you allow me, Anna, I know that you've been experiencing difficulties to grow your business. And Do you like to address any questions to Bobby or to Tom related to that? Maybe they can shed a light.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Alex. Well, in my business that I've been running since I was 17 years old, so it has been 11 years. We've been able to develop some business models to make the technology available for those communities who need but can't afford to have it. So big companies usually sponsors for these projects to reach them. But we know that what we are creating is definitely a public policy. It's a program where with our innovative technologies, the government can be able to achieve better health, better education by providing access to clean water for those rural communities in Brazil. But so far has been so hard to have this commitment to have partnership with government because we face a lot of challenges, not only talking about bureaucracy but also corruption. And we don't want to work with corrupt governments. How can we reach more people with the right partnership? What would be your recommendation and don't know some tips you can give to me?
So what are the actual issues you're focusing on in terms of growth? You want to elaborate on that? As you mentioned, you had a good year of revenues years ago. Your government, everybody comes after you. Every time you win an international prize, they use you as a propaganda element. But when time comes to help you with subsidies or opportunities, they never come. So would you like to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
See what exactly is what you're looking for to achieve and not able to because you are.
Yeah, definitely. So to achieve more people, we need some investments in terms of industry to be able to have the technology for a more affordable price and to run our social programs in the communities in a more standard ways. But also in terms of politicians, it's always like this, as Alex reported. We won prizes. We have some kind of brand that is well recognized not only in Brazil but worldwide. And they always say, "Okay, let's support you," and they take a picture. We start some conversations, but then nothing happens. No investment. Or they say sometimes, "Oh, we don't have the money to do it," but of course they have money for other things. And it's something that we always try to understand why so hard to work with the government. Shouldn't they be the ones responsible to provide clean water and sanitation? Shouldn't they be interested in help the community achieve a better quality of life? In this way, they would be able to save in so many other aspects. And we still don't know what is missing for this equation to have a good result.
Tom, would you like to address, because I know you have.
Sure. It's terribly unfortunate that we continue to struggle with things like clean water. These are things that I think, and this may be part of the problem in partnerships and in getting awareness, is that so many of us take clean water for granted. Those of us who have ready access, those of us who don't struggle with contaminated water, don't necessarily see the impacts that it has on people's lives. And so it's unfortunate that governments continue to struggle with this, especially when there are solutions that can be relatively easily implemented. If there are larger infrastructure issues, those can be more challenging. But when it really is a question of funding and finding the right places to implement something like this, it's a shame that there are things that hold that back. Obviously, corruption is something that as much as we'd like to say we don't have to deal with in many places of the world, it's truly, it's around in places all over, and becomes a real barrier to not only innovation, but to really saving people's lives. And it's a shame when greed gets in the way of that. But I do think that partnerships have been an incredible tool throughout my career. And when you're working with things that are on the leading edge of innovation, there's always this balance, and you're always a little bit ahead, and that by the nature of innovation, you're ahead of the times in trying to solve something that is a problem, and part of what's great about partnerships is that you can find alignment with companies or groups that have some goal in mind in supporting the efforts. We would love to think that it's only because of the health of people, but that's not always the driving factor. And so in approaching partnerships, it's both important to have the right kinds of partners, to find those partners with the right kinds of messages that resonate with them, and not only with what they can do for others, but what helps their business bottom line as well. And then to be able to to harness that power and do it in a way that's beneficial to everybody. So in thinking through, and we've discussed a little bit, but I'd love to discuss some more. The challenges that you face are being able to get people who can support and then get a benefit from that support. And obviously the health and well-being of these people has an impact on the people who work in whatever kind of retail or commerce happens around these communities. So that becomes an obvious first step, where someone who runs the local, whether it's a food co-op or a market or a supermarket or something that that they obviously need the community to thrive in order to then be able to give action to that commerce. So thinking through it that way, it's not just providing the clean water and providing health for people, but then what does that health mean for others in this ecosystem? And then finding alignment with those people to be able to help. And obviously, as numbers get bigger, those conversations become more challenging. But I would say that starting with the very local and then expanding your way out would be a great way to look at it. And as you go along and as you see commonality between different communities that you're working with or trying to work with, finding where those points connect up. And then the further up you can get in that food chain, the larger the checks become, the larger the opportunities become. But partnering at the small level can definitely lead to bigger partnerships and bigger initiatives moving forward.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know the details of your technology. Based on what I've heard here, I'm going to dovetail off what's been said. You're obviously a visionary, and you have a purpose, and you have a drive to realize that. It sounds like all you need next is a business partner to make wealthy in pursuit of realizing your vision. So in your strategy, you have the technology, you have the capability. You just need to find the right person who wants to make money alongside you, and then reach that target audience and scale up. And when you're creating that profit by generating that wealth, you're simultaneously doing the good you envision at the local micro level, that individual family that now has fresh water for their kids every morning before they go to school and every night before they go to bed. And I think those three elements absolutely mesh together within the vision as I understand you've described. So that would be my comment from the leadership spirit.
Well, if you allow me, Anna, I think I understood a little bit where she is right now, because she's been, how long you have SDW now?
11 years.
11 years. So she's been through this process already.
Okay.
I think where she's stuck is that she cannot move to the next level. She got all the local partnerships, she got everything she needed to do. her company is stable financially, a level of Brazil, but it could grow far beyond. For example, she already have a presence in Puerto Rico and some other countries as well, small and so forth. But she cannot get any support from the Brazilian government, or even from her state government, or from her mayor. They all show up when she gets an international award, and they all there. But then she doesn't have access to the subsidies from the government. And since her goal is to, put water fountains in the places, treat the water, make it, available for people in smaller scales, it's not something she can commercialize, right? So she can bottle the water. So it's not her goal is to go to these remote areas where they have rainwater or cistern waters and filter that, kill the bacteria and stuff, and make that water good. And that's where we believe, right, government would have some kind of subsidies, especially for youth empowerment and development. Say, we're going to help your business grow since you already have this international presence and all of it. She has all of it and absolutely zero support. So that I guess that's the direction she's trying to go. So I got to this point of all the locals and the world partnerships and so forth, but then she now got stuck.
Well, and to that point, I think Anna and I had a chance to discuss yesterday, and one of the things that she discovered along the way that I don't think really you may have touched on, but was a more kiosk-based system that could be sort of self-serve, where somebody would come in, and I assume that they would pay or unlock water to that has been filtered for them, to know that they can bring safe water back to their house. And I know you had mentioned that met with, for whatever reasons, a bunch of friction within Brazil, and it wasn't good for the Brazilian market the way that it was designed. But I would say that if it's been hard to get support within Brazil for that model, it does sound like something that could be applied in other places. And maybe that becomes the lead to go into other markets to then, try to find partners beyond just the Brazilian markets. And I think, with leadership in general, and I know we've touched on this a bit, challenge and headwinds, definitely is something that brings out the inner leaders in us. And this sounds like it's one of them. But I think the ways that you tackle this and the ways that you move forward, and now having a larger audience within the world, within the UN, being able to highlight those technologies and find the appropriate places that will be supportive is going to be important.
Thank you. Yeah, our challenge now is to find the correct partner to be able to achieve these goals.
Yeah, don't worry, that's not just your challenge. All of us have faced the same challenge of finding the right partner, and that's, I believe, SDG 17 plays such a big role, saying, hey, we got to do all this, but then we need to address the partnership for development. And took me a long time to find the right partners here, to find Tom and Frank. And
I think this does touch on one other piece as well, which is I know financial literacy has been, we've sort of talked about it in the introduction, but we didn't really focus on it as much here. It's something that's incredibly important to Frank and has been sort of a foundational piece for him, and for me as well. But what we find is, as much as there's a lack of focus on leadership in our traditional education systems, there's also an enormous gap when it comes to financial literacy. And what we find is that people don't really learn many of the basics about money, about an appreciation for it, an understanding of it, certainly of financial markets and how money works to help bring innovation to the world. And for Frank and for myself, we've had the benefit of having success in efforts. Him more on the traditional finance side, for me in traditional entrepreneurship, and we feel that it's our mission to now go and help others and educate others in things around financial literacy. And that's been a big part with the Variety Boys and Girls Club. That's a big part of what we're working on here with the Hunt Hill Farm, and something that in particular when it comes to youth entrepreneurship is critically important. And Anna, I know you found your way, very early, and Allison, I know you've done the same in creating your own business. But we feel that we need, as a community, we need to support entrepreneurs who do have unique financial needs, in understanding how these processes work, how to best leverage them, how to build not just a great innovation, but how to then build a business around that can benefit everybody.
All right.
Alessandro?
Yes.
I may be going out on a limb here, but we talk about the financial literacy, and I'm thinking along the lines that's not working. They're looking at it in that way as financial. What about the emotional piece? They love to be there when you have these highs, these successes. They want to play the hero. So maybe design it in a way, because this is about health, this is about people's health, where they could be seen as the hero. And they might invest emotionally rather than just looking at it as financially.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, it's just hard for me to see the governments being emotional, but yeah.
But if it comes from the people, if you get the people involved.
Yeah,
and
well,
people,
from the people, yes, I
Yeah.
think that's
And
the
they're
only
kind
way.
of, and then the government comes in and is like, ooh, this is a good opportunity for us to, they may not be emotional, but they may be able to use the emotion and manipulate it. Unfortunately, it should be just that you want to do the good, you want to save lives.
Yes, absolutely. Allison, do you have any questions? Gabby, would you like to ask any questions related to this topic?
I was actually just going to piggyback off what you said for you. I do think that if you show certain officials and everything that could provide funding, how integrating your company and getting you funding and help could benefit them in their campaigns to get more votes, because that's initially what their goal is,
Yeah.
then that's probably one of the best ways that you could actually get tangible financial help.
Yeah, that's a good strategy, definitely. Sometimes we face, for example, some municipalities, they still use water as a coin for vote.
Mhm.
So they don't really are interested in solving this, because if one part of the population don't vote for them, they cut the safe water access for this part of the communities. So it's not common in everywhere in Brazil, but some cities definitely we would have this struggle to use this for them to have the campaigns alongside our projects. But for others, definitely this is something that could work. I can see this model working in some areas of Brazil.
Gabby, you have a question?
I have a question more for the adults. One of the big topics we have is financial literacy and how there's a rising problem with the lack of financial literacy knowledge. We don't know what we don't know, so we can't ask the right questions. What would you guys, as adults who have experienced the real world and know the problems that come with finances and have had the opportunity to find the right solutions, what's the best advice you can give to a graduating high schooler that wants to go off in the world? And
I just want to say, so I have been in the school system. I've taught art K through 12, and there are many courses as juniors and seniors that are useless. And so many of my fellow teachers are like, why can't we do a year of financial literacy? People come out, kids come out, some people don't even know how to balance a checkbook. They don't, I hear fellow teachers saying that these kids, they're working jobs, but then they're spending all their money on Uber Eats, and they have no idea of where their money is going. I think there needs to be legislation or something to have financial literacy taught in the classrooms. That's definitely a huge step, and you would have had that already. And to fight for it, and then for you just to ask, to get support from somebody. Don't be afraid to ask, and have an advisor, have a mentor. But that is huge, and that as teachers we have been discussing for well over a decade. and no one listens, unfortunately, but they need to listen. And you are the ones, you're a junior, correct? Yeah, I would be like, hey, we need to learn financial literacy. What are you going to do about it?
I have the privilege that in my school uniquely, one of our graduation requirements is taking a personal finance class. But I know that that's not
Wow.
common across not only the state, but the country.
Wow.
So you said before that the teachers acknowledge this is a problem and that it needs to change. How do we get the school boards to make this a requirement in all schools?
I think a lot with comes grassroots, youth, parents, but especially youth, because they don't expect that. I've worked with different school boards and, for the youth demanding it throws them off. Like, wait a second, you can see parents, along with the parents, but you guys coming in and being like, this is what we need. This is what we want. And in a large group, doing that and just making it impossible for them to avoid you or put you off. And like Allison said, especially around elections, they're going to want to come out to be the hero. Look what we did. There's, a lot to that. But you have as much right as anybody else to demand, to be like, hey, you're failing us. This is what you need to do next.
Well, and I think that what we see within school districts and school boards is not unlike what Anna's running up against in Brazil, where, things are set up in certain ways and changing those patterns and going through a bureaucracy that has a certain agenda in mind and doesn't necessarily want to innovate can be challenging. And I think that's where we see ourselves coming in, here at Hunt Hill Farm, is we're working in particular together with the Variety Boys and Girls Club. They have a courses and things and with groups like Agora and with other groups that we can bring together here to really focus in on things that that youth need to survive and to thrive. And the more that we can develop that coursework and bring people together in an inspiring place to offer that, we see as being a critical thing for our communities. And ideally, we would love for all the school boards to consider financial literacy a priority and to bring it forward. But that change can take a long time. And here we have the benefit of the space and the inspiration to share with people, and the goal will be to continue building courses and programs and benefits for people around us. And a lot of it comes from people who have been successful in their own efforts and have learned it in their own ways. But we see this obligation to now share that knowledge with others and help guide people through.
So I'd just like to add that if human development and innovation is dependent on government adoption and then implementation, it's going to be a long time before anything happens. So when it comes to financial literacy or growing and scaling a business, waiting on government is not the solution I propose. I'd say if you want to be educated about something, go out and start now. The tools available today are endless in what's possible to learn about. So finding that tool to make that education relevant to you is also totally customizable today. There's no need to wait for a teacher to sit you down in a classroom and start presenting it. It can start now. It just takes a willing mind and a little bit of time. So I don't say support or waiting on government as the solution. I say starting now as an individual. And these individuals are typically the ones who rise to be the leader as the individual and put that burden on them. And people follow them because they naturally carry that burden. and that's what you can be.
I would pose the question, what if you don't know the correct questions to ask in order to gain the knowledge you need?
So it begins, I'd say, with reading. If you want to think, read. Pick the topic. And the more you read, the better your questions will become, the more focused your research can become, and the more deliberate your self-education will be.
I just want to say I worked a lot in Title I schools. Not everyone has the same opportunities. And I agree that, us self-starting and not waiting for the government, but I also think it's important to do it in a way that everybody has access. So I think it's twofold in that way. So I definitely, feel that, but it still has to be an overall thing for everybody as well. So.
Okay, so any more questions on this topic? Go ahead, any of the audience?
It seems like the adults have a lot of answers, and the answers go back to the youth, as in make the government, step up and have the government feel convicted to want to change the school board, or take it upon yourself to go learn it yourself. What are we as adults, what can we do to mentor them and help the next generation? Because it's a great question. You don't know what you don't know. So how do you know what to ask if you do not know what the questions are? Because we have the life experience that they do not. So sometimes they do think they know it all. Teenage is a wonderful year or time period where they do think they know everything because they just don't know what they do not know. So what can we do to help them?
Anybody likes to answer this question?
The biggest thing is for everyone in every situation is listen and not be afraid to ask a question just because you think it's dumb. I'm talking about just everyone. But that's huge, a huge starting point.
Can I add on?
Yeah.
And I think personally that what adults should do is they should sit down with their kid and, like as you said, the teenagers just think they know what they want. And so I think what they should do is, really sit down with the kid and ask, like, what do you want, in a serious, introspective way. And, most likely that either they might know a decent amount, or they might be like, I actually got to think about this. What do I really want? And, if you can really narrow it down, you can narrow down whatever certain interests they might have. And they could be something they didn't even know before. And then you expose them to it, and then, it just develops.
I think that being present in your child's life is very important, and having difficult conversations is essential to be able to help them grow as a person, to evolve. Because if you stay in your comfort zone, then you can't, grow and change for the better. And being able to encourage them, you need to be able to be there to talk to them. And I think that's a lot of the part what's lacking.
Expanding on what Michael said, ask your kids questions, because if they don't know the questions to ask you, then they're never going to learn. So sit down with them and ask, what do you want to do? How do you plan on getting there? You don't have this tool. What's a backup plan? It's not necessarily tearing them down or making them think, oh, this is a lot more difficult than I thought. It gives them the opportunity to think through the problems and to seek solutions to issues that they may not have been aware of. For example, when starting my own business recently, I just had to redo all the legal filings for the setup of my company because I didn't realize that as a minor, I wasn't allowed to own more than 25% of my own company. I didn't know that was even a thing, so I couldn't ask that to figure out. If someone had sat down with me and made me think through that, then I would have avoided spending an extra $100 to redo my filings.
I also want to add something from my own perspective and experience, is that the adults need to see the potential in the young people as the future. They need to understand that if they don't see that kid, that teenager, as someone capable of changing the world, then they won't support it. And from my own experience from something that my dad told for a reporter. They asked him, do you support your daughter? Could you imagine the potential that she would be able to achieve and that she would change the lives of thousands of people? And he told the journalist that he just supported me. He didn't think that I would achieve so many things that go so far. It was unbelievable. He didn't believe in the beginning, but he just supported me. He just did everything that he needed as a parent for me to be able to achieve what I need to achieve. So the adults need to be that person, not only the parent, but the teachers, the mentors, everyone around that teenager, that kid. And the kid needs to see that the ones that are surrounding them are believing in their potential and not like, oh, you are a teenager, you don't know nothing, you can do nothing, you need to learn and you need to be an adult to do it. No, you can't do this.
I'm gonna add on to what you said. I think the adults can always improve, but I personally think it should be a two-way street. Like kids these days are also disconnected. You have social media and other devices, so they're just not really present in their life. They're really out of it. So I think that for a kid to grow, it should be a two-way street. The kid has to be present in what they want, and there's some simple ways to do this, even as something as woo-woo like meditation. I personally think it's really good. It just allows you to sit with your thoughts and really think about calm in a lone place what you want, and then over time when you do that, it's a daily habit. Then you can go to the parent and then talk about your future goals and stuff. So I just think it has to come from both sides.
Well, in this segment, that's how I'm going to jump into the question, actually, the innovation message number 9. So how can digital transformation and inclusive innovation ecosystems be leveraged to accelerate youth entrepreneurship and build resilient local industries? And that's one of the reasons we have the Igniting Change to Youth Social Entrepreneurship. For hearing these kinds of questions for a long time, and from parents and from kids and from everyone, that although we do have many online platforms today for engagement in several different levels, there is not one platform that's dedicated to youth entrepreneurs. They're interested in learning and getting more information and details, and then be connected to mentors and individuals that can answer those questions and help evolve into the decision-making and the planning aspect of it, so it can evolve to become interesting for potential investors. And that's one of the reasons that answering the UN call for civil society, entrepreneurs, public sector, and governments, and so forth, to actually develop some kind of platform that could allow for that. And that's one of the reasons we are working on the development of the Lively Up youth engagement platform that will allow you to log into and join that network. And through that network, you have access to mentors and even potential investors once you're able to put your business plan together. What are your goals and details and all of that? So my question is, going to the question here, how do you think that actually, now that you hear about the Lively Up network, but today and other options and possibilities, how could we answer the question? Digital transformation, inclusive innovation ecosystems be leveraged to accelerate youth entrepreneurship and build resilient local industries. So is there anything else that you believe is necessary or would be interesting to have available? Or lack of zero?
Having been on the forefront of a lot of innovation in multiple industries and sectors, you're seeing the beginnings of the internet, and I registered my first domain in April of it's actually another year, April of 1994, and I was very involved in early internet culture, and then I worked in music, and I worked on bringing music and and the internet or computers together in very early stages. And then I looked at how music was getting into people's hands, and I changed that process. And then at how music was broadcast, and I joined XM Satellite Radio to help define a new way of bringing music to people. And then with social media, I actually built a bunch of technologies around how we could leverage early social media tools for brands and for more formal conversations. And so I've seen this change through multiple industries, and in all of those cases, it was people looking within to find the things that they really need, and then using leadership to go out and inspire others to come along on that ride. And that, through all of these different changes in innovation, that's always been the case. And often, especially when it comes to technology, that gets driven by youth and their needs and their desires. So, exactly how we get it done, it's always been slightly different in context. But these opportunities are here now, and we're seeing some of the biggest change we've ever seen on the technology side, for sure. And even in just the ways to address, the needs that we have, and everyone around the world has certain needs in their own communities. We now have better tools to do outreach, better tools to do research, better tools to try to build solutions and frameworks, and youth will be the ones to do that. It's up to us as the adults to empower them, and to give them the knowledge that they can have to better research and establish and raise and spend that money along the way.
So Tom, are there mistakes made along the way?
Always.
Are there mistakes being made right now?
Always.
Always. I think this goes back to the question earlier. It's not about not making the mistake. It's having that mentality, that thought process that I'm going to keep going forward. And that's one of the pillars of leadership. Thinking like a leader means it's not that I'm not going to make a mistake. I don't need to be perfect. I need to keep moving forward. And I'm going to learn from those mistakes. I'm not going to repeat them, but I'm going to keep moving forward. I think that goes to the heart of your question that you asked earlier, based off the examples we were just given.
And as a parent of two teenagers myself, I find that I've said this for a long time, but now I'm seeing the results of it as my kids become more independent. But when they started as little children, I remember thinking that what I need to do is teach them how to make decisions, how to think things through critically, how to learn from their environments, and they're always going to make bad decisions along the way. It happens, but if they're consciously making decisions along the way, they can then be accountable for those decisions when they make them. And now that my kids are becoming more independent, I'm seeing the results of that, and I'm seeing them make decisions on their own, and that they have a process and a way to learn from the things around them. And so far, they've made mostly good decisions. But I think that as we what's so fascinating to me about the way that the UN embraces youth is that we often think of youth as just sort of up to 18, and then they're independent and they kind of go off on their own, which as parents we know is not really the fact. But it's we want to prepare children as they grow and develop and mature. But I think there's also a clear understanding within the UN that responsibility doesn't just end when they become legally independent, and that obligation for us as communities is to support people, and the UN defines it as 35, which I think is I think that's probably about right given my own personal experience, and it's still growing. But I think the idea that we support people within these foundational periods in their lives is critical. And I love that the scope is all encompassing. Obviously, today and in general, we end up focusing on the younger side of youth, but that support and that focus needs to be on everyone who is in the building stages of their lives.
Awesome. Any questions within this segment? Any comments?
Not a question, but more adding on. I think that one thing that can also really help the youth and encouraging them as entrepreneurs is to acknowledge that they are not the same as adults. They don't have the same resources that adults have, and they don't have the same experience. For example, there's a lot of costs that come with wanting to enter into a workforce or starting your own business. And the younger you are, the less likely you are to have the means to fund that. And that's a huge setback for people who want to start younger. It keeps them from achieving the best possible results that they can because they don't have the same access to resource.
Anna, how did you find your first investors so many years ago when you were starting your business?
Oh, that's an interesting story because I faced the same challenge. I didn't have money. I need to buy materials to make my product. And what I faced was my parents, they don't really have the resources to fund me. And I just got, no, I need to do it. I need to find a way to do it. I didn't have any available sponsor so far. So I just went to every small business that could provide me the materials and explain to them, well, I have this idea to participate to a Young Scientist Award. I need this, but I don't have the money to do it. And I could achieve some donations from these local entrepreneurs. And I was able to build my first prototype back then when I was 15 years old, with the support of my parents to go to that places with him, and also to assemble everything. So my dad helped me with this part. Also sending emails to I need to prove that the quality of the water is good. How am I going to do it as I don't have access to laboratories? So I sent emails to laboratories that could supply me the a kind of it's like a thing that you put in the water and change color based on the quality and the presence of bacteria and stuff. And they donated me because I explained what I was going to do, what it was for, and that I was a teenager. I didn't have money to buy. So that was how I started without having any kind of money. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's always harder. It's always slower, the process, and you need to be resilient. You need to understand that, okay, I'm not as smart in terms of having the resources and the knowledge as an adult would be, but the best thing that I did was to start young. And this is my only professional experience so far. I started the business itself with 17, the technology I built with 15, but I didn't want to become an entrepreneur because I know that entrepreneurs need to have communication skills. And as I said before, I was a very shy person. I want to work in a lab. I want to just build my technology, and then someone else would provide the technology for the people who need it. But as I start to showing the technology for universities, politicians, and they just, oh, you are just a girl, fantastic what you did, but they didn't support me. I understand that I need to do it by myself. So with 17 years old, I started the business because I needed to make the technology reach the ones that need it. So that was my only motivation to become an entrepreneur. And then I need to face a very difficult path to be able to speak in public. That's definitely something that is still challenging for me, but you can see that now I can speak. When I was 15 years old, in my first stage, I just could speak because I had 15 days memorized every word that I need to say. And I was like a robot, frozen, speak to the public with a microphone in my hand. And if someone had recorded back then, it would definitely be a picture with a sound, because I was completely frozen. And when someone asked me a simple question, I couldn't even answer properly. The question was, I still remember, because I still face, wow, I had the answer. Why couldn't I say it? And a girl asked me, if you are using the sun radiation to kill the microorganisms, it wouldn't be giving the person who is drinking the water radiation. And I could just said, well, you eat fruits, right? The fruits are receiving the same radiation. You are not getting sick because of that. So the water is the same process. I could say that, but I just could raise a no. And that's it. So, and the fun fact about this experience is I was so think that I went so badly that the next day was the award day, and I didn't go because I thought that I wouldn't have any chance to win. And one friend told me later that day, well, I was looking for you. They said that you won the second place, and no one was going to the stage because you weren't there, of course. And I was like, wow, I didn't believe in myself that I could be able to win this prize. And then, even though I thought that I was terribly, someone believed in my idea and gave me the second place. And this is something that taught me that I need to believe more in myself, and I need to understand that, of course, I won't be good in every aspect that is required for entrepreneur. For example, I'm not good in finance and stuff, but I need to try, always be able to see that, of course, we are going to make mistakes. It's very important to do it, to learn, and not do it again and again, just learn from the first time, but also to be able to have to talk to as many people as possible, as many adults, as many specialists, mentors as possible, because they have something to taught us. They have some experience we can learn based on their mistake, but at the same time, we need to filter, because sometimes their experience is not exactly as ours, what they did, and they think that if we are going to the same direction, we are going to do another mistake. Sometimes it's not true. Sometimes we need to be wise to always keep thinking about, okay, what this person is telling me, what is exactly can I learn from it, and what I know that, okay, maybe this part that it won't be something good for my experience. And so that's what I did along all these years. I try to speak to as many people as possible. I try to face my challenges and fears, as speaking public, for example. And now I know that every time that I'm speaking in public is a way that I'm one step closer to make my technology available for everyone. Always, everything that I do is based on this special goal. If it's something that convert to this goal, I will continue to do it.
So you're thinking like a leader, assuming all the responsibility to realize your vision. You're going out and communicating deliberately to inspire people to believe in you and your product. You had to make a strategy. I'm going to build a prototype and I'm going to show it to the right people. And then you made plans to go get the resources to build that prototype. But you couldn't just sit around because you wanted the resources. You had to physically go out and perform the task of getting it, right? And you're doing it to serve a specific community with a need. You want to meet their need. Those are the 5 pillars of leadership that I understand. So when we take that, let's go back to Tom here. Tom's the investor. Someone young with all these 5 attributes comes to you. What does it take for someone like you to invest in that?
So it's, I think as entrepreneurs, we generally are eternal optimists. And I think to be successful in it, you also need to be, eternally curious. And, I think the ways that we find these things are that we find a problem that we're really passionate about. We find a problem that we feel that we can solve. Problem solving tends to play a big role in all of this, but I don't think it's the key. I think that's more the mechanism. And, you mentioned that you struggled speaking publicly, and many of us do. And again, it's something that's not necessarily featured or highlighted or, focused on in traditional education programs. And it's something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with, and something that I've actually helped a lot of people with is that there's a program, I think it's actually international, but it's called Toastmasters. And they have this process, and not everybody agrees with exactly the way they do it, but if you struggle with being able to stand up in front of people and talk, they have a platform that can do it. I'm sure there are a bunch of others too, but if it's something that you know that you're struggling with, you can then find ways to build and improve. And that's, again, part of that problem solving instinct. Having the confidence and the conviction to know that what you're doing has an impact means something to people. And then being able to show that you've done it, and you've struggled through your challenges, and you've had success, and that what you're doing works and has an impact on people, all of those things factor into a decision to fund or not to fund. And a lot of times, and in fact, I'm working on building a new venture studio in a market that traditionally didn't really support early stage funding for things. It happens to have an incredible university, and they have all of these ideas and inventions and things that happen. And I literally went through on a tour when we were first starting, and a guy said, oh, we have about 100 different concepts that come through as capstone projects every year. And a few of them show real promise and get developed. And we have file cabinets filled with the last 15 years of capstone projects. All have been researched. All have real applications. Many of them even had initial sponsors, or there was some sort of a business need that was brought forward, and there just hasn't been a method or a path to bring those forward.
Sounds like they lack leadership behind them.
They do.
Yeah, but for example,
but it's also within the university structure. They wanted to be able to show that they could bring people forward and that they could try to solve problems and do the research. They didn't necessarily have an investment or a conviction about those actually being developed into businesses. And it's where they really struggle. And it's one of the big problems that we've been trying to solve is how do we, and what we ended up finding, it's a friend of mine took a job within this university, and he went to his boss about 6 weeks in and said, I love this. There's all this innovation. There's all these opportunities, but I can't do what you really need me to do for these ideas. I can't do within the university structure. And so we've built this venture studio that sits just alongside the university, where we then have certain rights, agreements, and things to be able to take the things that would otherwise just end up in a file cabinet, or the things that are showing that promise early on, and bring them forward. Many communities have things like this, and many don't. And if you're finding that in the community that you're in that doesn't exist, there are ways to either look at other communities that do have it and try to find your way into that. Or as you've had success, there are ways to then invest back in your own communities to help bring that forward. All of that takes leadership, and all of that takes not just leadership and the ability to fund it, but takes vision and time and a lot of things that people just don't tend to focus on.
So if there's a lack of leadership, then there's a lack of innovation. So there's a lack of social development. There's a lack of entrepreneurship. It all trickles down.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons I think the UN put the request for anyone to come up with this kind of platforms that allow youth leadership and entrepreneurs to interact meaningfully and exchange these ideas. And the whole transfer of knowledge has been I talk a lot with Dr. Hanif Mizui about that. is that we're lacking the transfer of knowledge to the new generation because of a lot of distractions or whatever reasons.
And
why
in
it
a
doesn't happen.
post-COVID world where people stopped working together in physical spaces, it became a lot harder to transfer that knowledge or to mentor people or to do so. Now we need to find new ways and new places to connect.
Go ahead.
Well, on that, I got a question for the 4 younger minds here at the table. What made you want to seek out leadership skills before turning the age of 35, right? Why are you doing it so young? What is it you're grasping onto? That transfer of knowledge that you have sought out independent of anyone telling you to do it.
For me personally, I find great inspiration in some past generations' leaders. And I believe that our current leaders are not stepping up as they need to. And instead of waiting around for someone else to take the initiative and fix that, I want to be one of those individuals who goes and creates a change that I wish I could see in my leaders today. So starting at a younger time, that gives me more opportunity to fall down and make mistakes and then improve. So I can see the results I want to happen sooner rather than later.
For me personally, I always try to make myself better as a person so that I could help those around me. And also being able to start earlier, not just gives you time to make mistakes, but also helps you financially, because if you start doing things with finances and investing earlier, then that trickles down in the long run and, multiplies. That's how finance works. So starting earlier could only help me and allow me to do more with what I know.
I think that mistakes firstly should not be viewed as failures, but as attempts. And then understanding in the back of your mind that, the next time I do, X task, I'm going to do better at it. And I also want to push myself more out of my comfort zone more. And, there isn't any better time to do that than now because, like Allison and Gabby said, mistakes are a lot less impactful and, you have more time to learn.
For me, actually, I never wanted to become a leader because as I was a shy person, I always see a leader as someone who speaks very good, fluently in public, and like to do it, and I don't really like to do it. But once I understand that my goal in my life was to have a technology that could provide access to clean water, and understand that if I wasn't a leader, I wasn't be able to do it, then I decided to become one. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Well, I think Michael started us off by saying that, it's not just the loudest voice in the room, it's the one that has the most impact. And I think that's what you've learned through your travels, is that it's about what you say and how it impacts people and not so much in just the way that you say it, which I think a lot of people just focus on because they think, the loudest voice is the most dominating, but that's not necessarily what makes it the most impactful.
Yeah, honestly, it really goes back to knowing who you are as a person, including your values and your beliefs.
Would you like to ask a question?
A couple of statements and a question. Hearing everyone speak, it just enlightens me and gets me very excited because it kind of all resonates right back down to the bottom line is empowering the youth. Empowering the youth with the tools, the resources, and the opportunities that they need, that they can't get. Which I hear your story, Anna, and I just so happen to be Allison's mom, so I can resonate from seeing from her struggle from the very beginning, because I don't know if you know, but she is very shy, reserved, and practice makes perfect. So she practiced quite a bit, and you can even ask her herself, but a little bit on your business and what you do, I think is amazing. and very inspiring for everyone, and to not take no for an answer. And one of the most important words you probably will ever learn in your life is to be tenacious. And that means to be so stubborn to not give up till you succeed. And my question to you is, like, you're having certain obstacles to meet your goal. So are you considering, in a sense of maybe commercializing it, maybe to farms and other things to create, because it is a need, and I think it's a great backup for everyone to have, just in case, you know, something happens, they don't have access, they will have access one way or another to clean water. It's a matter of survival, everyone needs it. Would you considering your business plan, like Allison gives a certain percentage of her sales to her charity of choice, which is St. Jude's. Maybe you can create your own fund for that purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, it's something that I was talking to Alex. If I had a time machine and could start again, I would definitely try to have a business that could be more financially sustainable, in terms of I could have a client that would pay for the solution, and with that I could provide some impact, social impact, with the financial resources that I would have with a different business model. But right now I'm so focused, and I feel like I can't stop what I'm doing to start something different. Definitely, I would need a different technology that I would need to start from zero, because our technology is just a good fit for those communities that we help with, the scenarios that they have. It's not something that we could address to different publics. This is one limitation about some of our technologies. Of course, not all of them. We are trying to see if one or two we can have private clients that could use for their own business, but still we are not yet there. But definitely something that we keep thinking about. What could we do differently so we could have more money, and with that money we could provide more impact for those who need it. Something that it's difficult to answer, but we are kind of a little bit closer. And thank you for your words and for supporting your daughter. This is something very important for her, to have parents that support her.
Any other questions you'd like to ask our panelists or discussants? Anybody? You? Go ahead. What's your name?
Alora.
Alora.
For the youth, what is something you value from being in the Agora Leadership Development Program, and how did it help you prepare for ECOSOC?
I remember my most productive and least favorite part of Agora was all the practice speeches that we did. We would be given a certain topic, and then sometimes we would have 5 minutes to prepare an entire speech that we had to say. It gave me a lot of anxiety, but it also helped me improve and grow as a person, because honestly, public speaking is not my forte. It's not what I'm naturally good at, but it is an area that I can improve in to help multiply the impact that I can share with everyone else, because being able to communicate and talk is the only way to get your idea across. And if you can't do that, you can't share what you can do with other people.
Go ahead, Michael.
You know, for me, some things I really got out of Agora were, you know, it's getting out of my comfort zone and seeing feedback and mistakes, not as failure, but as attempts, and knowing that I'll do better next time. And like Allison said, all the speech practices on the different topics are, you know, a really great way to do that. We got feedback at the end of every practice, and you know, it's delivered constructively, so we were able to actually learn. And you know, related to ECOSOC, I've never done this before. It's my first time, so you know, I'm taking really big leaps out of my comfort zone here. But you know, I'm really enjoying the process.
For me, it was the thing I struggled with understanding the most. we were taught that in order to accomplish your vision, first you must have a vision, then you have strategy, then you have different plans, then you have lines of efforts, and the distinction between all those steps, it took me forever to wrap my head around, and I actually argued with a lot of the definitions because for me it just didn't make sense. It just seemed overcomplicated. But now it's helped me actually learn how to create a solid plan and achieve the goals that I want.
That answers your question. Yeah. You have a question as well?
Yes, I want to, I'll talk about SDG 17. On paper, in words, it was very clear. And I just wanted to comment that, Anna, you brought it to life. A real life example in your grounded way you shared, especially with the youth. This is a youth forum, after all, what it's all about, to go through the experience, the struggles, the successes, and the current obstacles. So I really appreciate it. And my question is for the youth. When it comes to, let's say SDG 17, which is partnerships, what was your take on, like the real life or practical take on partnerships, either while you were preparing for ECOSOC or just in your life?
I think for me personally, partnerships don't have to always be direct. It can be very broad and indirect. For one example that I can relate to personally, I'm hoping to attend the Youth Arts and Flavors Festival and vend food, as that is the business I am starting. But in order to do that, I first have to pay a fee to the town of New Milford, not to the event itself, in order to legally be allowed to sell food there. But as a youth, it's a huge disadvantage to me because I don't have the funds yet to pay for that. So partnering to encourage it could simply be the town waiving fees like that for youth entrepreneurs.
You know, for me, partnerships means when different people and groups come together to work on common goals. And in the program, I'm going to say, I've only heard about it recently, but there's this program called Strive Together, and it consists of the Danbury Public School System, nonprofits, and other group leaders. And they work together on common goals. And some of them include, early children's reading levels, middle school math skills, and high school graduation rates. I think this program is a perfect example of how, when people collaborate together, progress is a lot quicker.
For me, partnerships is incredibly important because even on like an individual scale, when you get to know one person, you expand your thought process, you get to learn about new experience that you never even thought might have existed. And for me personally, being able to communicate and talk and connect with people, it's been incredible for my personal growth to better understand the actual world that I live in today.
Thank you.
Good. Any more questions? You have a question? No? You good? All good?
Can I add to the partnership?
Of course you can.
I think one of the critical things partnerships forces a leader to accept is patience and tolerance. Because you are in partnership with other emotional beings who have their own unique agenda and their own desire for partnering with you. And in my military background, being put in austere environments, I was dependent on some partners for my very life sometimes. And that was my vested interest, not necessarily theirs. Partnerships are difficult because human beings can be difficult. Leaders who rise to work well with others and forge partnerships that last and produce results are leaders that we need today. And that is something that I encourage you all to continue pursuing. Find people to train your ability to partner with and develop those skills, and you'll be much better for it in your professional endeavors.
Well, going to the scenario where you pretty much let's just take the financial literacy piece that should be included in the school system and all of that, and it isn't, and you have to approach the board, touching to the UN question on what needs to be done so youth is not excluded from these decisions, actually consulted at least, or have a chance to participate. Of course, it would be amazing if they start electing or nominating youth to participate on those boards, so someone that actually live or have the experience could help with the influence. But besides that, any of your opinions on what should be the suggestions to leadership and to the governments on how can we bridge that gap and involve more youth, whereby we have that situation, right? UN is 16 to 35, so we may not need to be thinking of the early stages of youth, but the more mature side of it, or a little bit more experience and so on and so forth, right? So what would be the suggestions here, or how could we tackle this when you go in and say, okay, elections are coming, governments are there, it's what the young entrepreneurs are going to mobilize and protest, or write letters to your state reps, to your local mayors, to the board of directors, or whoever it is. So how do you see that? How can we create the mechanism that allows for a larger awareness within the higher ups to understand the importance of hearing and communicating with the youth? So don't exclude, bring it in. If you feel excluded from this process, what would be the mechanism for us to make it happen? To let them know that we need more youth participating in the decision-making process, because we're talking about the youth, right? So any thoughts are welcome.
I think that helping them understand that the youth is what the world is eventually going to be dependent on, and then, the youth that come after them, eventually those people in like governments and, bureaucracy and everything, they're going to be dependent on the youth. So they need to help the youth in order for the youth to be able to help them.
I agree with you, but I also understand that the 2030 UN agenda is entirely about that, right? That there's a huge lack of awareness. A lot of people don't even know what the SDGs are, right? There's a lot of rejection sometimes just because, it's the UN. Oh, some people are, yeah, UN. Because there's this whole notion that the UN is going to solve the problems, but it's not the goal. The goal is to create their awareness and create the ability to communicate and interact, and so people can exchange ideas, like the forum opening yesterday and so on and so forth. And one of the panelists actually came with an interesting topic, which was that we should stop taking the youth's ideas and evolving them and actually bringing the youth together with those ideas, right? Invest in youth like yourselves instead of just taking our idea and transforming into something else. Now, we have the 2030 agenda, we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but there's a huge lack of awareness, sometimes a huge lack of willingness to listen to. So I guess to clarify my question is, what are you, the youth, willing to do in order to make yourselves heard so the message can come across? Because there is already a global commitment to make it happen. The 2030 agenda is all about that, and we have 15 years to try to make it work, right? Started in 2015, when we ended with the Millennium Development Goals, which I worked throughout most of them, and now 2015 to 2030 is the Sustainable Development Goals, and I'm sure from 2030 to 2045, something else will take place. But in the meantime, what is actually the youth going to do to be heard in an eloquent way so these transformations can come? Anybody can answer that.
I believe that one of the key ways that youth are actively doing this is through the use of social media. Social media is a tool, and there are a lot of people using that tool in order to share their voice. But besides that, there is a wonderful example of a 14-year-old in the state of Virginia, I believe, who is currently running for a local office because legally that state has no age requirement for that position. That is a wonderful,
Wow.
Vermont.
Vermont. That is a wonderful example of youth actively stepping up to create the change they want to see. And maybe instead of giving the youth more tools, you could take away more restrictions.
Well, I think if we're already 10 or 11 years into this process,
Yeah.
we're at least 2/3 of the way through.
Mhm.
And I think, as we've said here, you need to keep looking at what you're doing and making sure that it's progressing. The fact that there's only a third or 5 years left to go until we get to 2030 means that we still have a lot of work to do. And I think that what we're trying to do here is to be able to bring people together to share best practices, to share learnings, to share things that have happened, to build better, for lack of a better term, sort of coursework and material that can be helpful to others. And I think that with innovation in technology, it used to be that you had to use a printing press and you had to deliver things and ship them and whatever. Now we can make things digital, we can put things into PDFs and they can be distributed around the world at no cost, very little cost. So being able to take this information and show the importance of this for youth and share this with leaders is exactly what I think we're trying to do within the youth forum and within our efforts here. But then also being able to build platforms and frameworks in which people can share that knowledge and connect with others. I think a big part of being a leader can you can develop certain skills that help you in leadership. You can find things that you're passionate about that can make an impact. Part of the problem is, obviously, we've talked about this a bunch, connecting with funding is a challenge. And some ecosystems are more readily accessible than others if you're in them. Being able to move forward and make an impact, often you need to bridge gaps between different communities. So having the ability to bring people together to find common interests, to find mentorship, to find if you're in a community in a small town in Brazil that doesn't have clean water, chances are there aren't a whole lot of people there that can help connect you to the larger world. But within the UN, we have these people who have developed as leaders, who have come forward and become part of a global community. Now we need to empower them to go back into their own communities and to help connect people with other communities to benefit and align with the 17 SDGs and more.
For example, Gab, you just mentioned that for the Youth Arts and Craft Festival here, that there is no cost for you to join, none of the young entrepreneurs. So Allison put this concept together, and you said you will have to pay a fee to the town in order to. So is that a reality for all other participants in the festival, or just for food related?
As far as I'm aware, because I don't know much about the craft side, but as far as I'm aware, in order to sell food in any place in Connecticut, you have to first pay that town to get a permit to sell there.
So what have you done, or are you planning on approaching the local administration, the mayor, the town council? Where are the resources available for you? Can you appeal and ask the town council for a waiver? Can you ask the mayor for a waiver, or whoever the department may be, using the SDGs as a reference, the youth empowerment, their own words about everything they're trying to do, or maybe approach the youth agency and say, I'm youth, I'm come here, have this, it costs me nothing, I want to go, I don't have my business, da, da, da. Have you tried any of these things, or are you planning on doing, how are you planning to address that? Because you can say, yes, I have to pay the fee, or say, I will go and do this, this, and that. to try to see if they can give me an opportunity.
was
What's your plan? How you plan to deal with that?
I was actually hoping today, with the expected presence of the mayor, to be able to address this to him personally so that he could directly, hopefully, try to change it or find a solution or at least offer some aid. But as that is not possible today, I'm going to have to come up with another plan, another strategy to get my vision across.
Yeah, you can absolutely request an appointment with the mayor, with the mayor's office, and come alone or with your parents or with the organizer of the event and other youth friends of yours, other vendors that will be there that might not need to pay the fee and say, no, they don't have to pay the fee. Why do I need to pay a fee? Of course, those are rules, regulations, so on and so forth, but it might be the possibility that someone can waive that. So my suggestion is that you use the power of youth, your ability to communicate and convey the message, especially if you can find within their commitment to empower and to help the youth and create and generate opportunities, because there's also a business development office in town that you might be able to approach and say, I'm young, I'm here. Everybody knows that you start your business now, you're young, you live with your parents, you're still going to school and you're trying. And there might be a possibility. So the point is this something you're considering in terms of, raising your voice, creating that awareness? Because this is kind of similar to the Board of Education and all the other places. They're just going to say, no, got the fee, go in there, let's treat you like any of us, when the reality is completely different, right? So is that something that you are willing to do and go and organize? And of course, share with us the outcome later, because we'd love to know.
Definitely, and I feel like that ties into two of my previous statements about, one, removing the restrictions, because I feel like that is a big restriction or at least boundary for that, and also the acknowledging the difference between youth and the adults. So I think that I should practice what I preach. And
Allison, since you were, organizing the idealizing the event, this whole experience that will lead to, because as far as I understand, this is a trial just to see how it's going to go. Then in the fall, if it works well, going to expand to a real festival. As the organizer of the event, and then have one of your participants, and assuming that because this is the small version of it, you might have more food vendors coming. And the event is exclusive for youth, so all the vendors are youth. By the way, the early stages of youth, 16 to 18. You guys limited to 18?
Anything under 18.
Oh, anything under 18? Okay, great. So the limit is 18. Have you thought of doing the same thing, approaching as the organizers and putting together this event where there is no cost for young entrepreneurs to come and try to see if it works and so on and so forth? And I noticed that there are some kinds of fees associated to some kind of the trades. And I'd like to know, what can we do to waive this, or to have the business development office sponsor this, or some kind of form where they can actually demonstrate the support for youth initiatives? Because then it becomes more powerful. Instead of one vendor trying to get into, the organization, the participants, and people coming together. Because it's different if you go, or if you and 5 of other vendors coming together as a group for that particular meeting to show that everyone stands behind. Is that something that you are willing to consider, or is part of the plan? Because you're planning an event, right? You're planning something that is exclusive for youth and entrepreneurs, and to empower and promote.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we have been working to establish a youth fund in order to eliminate some of those restrictions and boundaries. For food specifically, it's not my forte. I'm not super aware of all the permits and things that you need to be able to legally have that business. And so that's why I'm trying to have different divisions of leadership in the actual events organization, so that vendors like Gabby could be able to reach out and ask, hey, did you have this problem? What did you do? And I am always open to finding new solutions to be able to make things easier for the youth, because that is my goal, to establish something that is cost-free, but that is often very difficult because costs are very prevalent, especially in today's society and economy.
Okay, so any recommendations, any questions, any thoughts?
I want to just add a little bit to that. So I propose an idea of maybe making an appointment with Mayor Pete and sharing about the food permit and see where he can guide us to what would be necessary in the long term, maybe to make another exception for young entrepreneurs and such, to waive that fee, because there is one for not-for-profit, so maybe for young entrepreneurs, making another one where they waive that fee. So we are more than willing to try to coordinate and.
Are you talking about promoting a policy change or a policy
Correct.
implementation
Long-term on
within
the
the
food
town
permit,
to include the youth under?
On the food
Nonprofits
permit, there's
or-
different tiers
Mhm.
of, and then the cost associated with that. And so I noticed on there, there's a not-for-profit, they waive the fee. So why not for young entrepreneurs, they can waive that fee? So how that goes, I don't know, but then I figured why not have an appointment, sit down with Mayor Pete to see what it takes in order to make that change, and what in the short term for this event, what resources he has or suggestions who we need to speak to see if they would consider waiving that fee.
Yeah, because this is the test, this is a try, this is the prototype. But when you go to the bigger one, would be interesting to find out already where other fees associated to the different trades, since they don't pay for rental, they don't pay for the any exhibiting fees or so on and so forth. So if all the fees are associated with government or municipality or so on and so forth, would be interesting to make sure that you know all the potential fees associated to that are related to the town, but bring together as many as you or participants you can, including parents too. And they don't have to speak, they just have to be there. But I would love to know the outcome of this, how you can handle that, because they might say, well, right now it's too early, I can't do it for next month, but we might be able to do it for your big festival in the fall, and so on and so forth. And it's a way to start communicating with all the participants, exchanging ideas and questions and so forth. So when you have that plan and understand your limitations and your challenges, you all should go together to raise that voice, to build that strength. And it's a good way for your parents and people to actually be behind as a backdrop, just as showing more support. The more you bring, the more you can congregate, the stronger you become. And again, the UN 2030 agenda is all about youth empowerment. In every single nation, there are United States, there's a UN member state are adopting this commitment. But it goes at federal level. And the problem becomes when that awareness trickles down to get to municipal level, a lot of them have no idea the SDGs exist. My work with the Millennium Development Goals was exactly that. I traveled several countries and go to grassroots communities to educate municipalities and the actual audience of the existence of the 8 Millennium Development Goals. And now we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and the problem is exactly the same, a lack of awareness. So you can bring to them the posters with the SDGs and start by saying, do you know and do you agree with the commitments that the government made worldwide to achieve these 17 goals? Are you willing to work with me on 17 to achieve, connect with the SDGs? Because it is a commitment made by the higher hierarchy of government. And they have a moral obligation to try to achieve them. So the more you become aware of these commitments and options out there, the stronger your appeal will become. So if you bring them not just as, okay, the fact that you guys are organizing can do is great, but if you can tie that to a global commitment, it's just not here. What you're doing here, Mr. Mayor or Common Council, whatever, is going to reflect globally as some kind of policy. Like you said, create different tiers. Why not youth from, they might not want to adopt the 16 to 35, let's say from 16 to 18, they're entrepreneurs, should have a specific tier that could benefit us and give us inspiration and give us that, that little of opportunity to try. Maybe you draft even, a suggestion of this is how it would benefit us. This is how it would inspire us and spread the word.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I'm completely open to that. And I also think that, if you have a question and you think it can actually help people make things a little easier, it can't hurt to ask and try.
I agree with that. So we are getting to the end of our side event of today. So I'd love to hear your closing statements, and we will put together the document, the review of what we spoke today. So every suggestions you gave, every concerns you have will be listed. We have 5 days to submit that, but we'll share with everyone, and you'll be able to have your comments and so forth. And hopefully next year, we'll be doing it again. We're trying to get it at the UN headquarters. We'll see if we have a space to do it over there. But this live stream and everything we're doing here will be shared, is available to be watched and downloaded all over the world to all the youth with the UN website, our concept note. And I'd love to hear your closing statements and your appeal and your ideas and how you feel about it. You want to start, Michael? We'll do the same way we did the intro.
Well, I thought it was very interesting hearing about, what everyone's up to, like their businesses and their goals. And the main thing I've noticed is that, the main underlying purpose is to meet other people's needs before their own. And, this actually reminds me of something I learned a few days ago in my psychology class. It's a part of positive psychology, and it's what's called a meaningful life. And it basically talks about how, true happiness and meaning is found through serving other people. And that's also like the core foundation of the GORA program, just meeting other people's needs before your own. And, I also want to tie that to self-leadership, which to me just means having understanding of your values and beliefs, making a foundation out of it, and then making that into a vision, and then planning and strategizing with discipline to actually make that a reality, not just for yourself, but also for other people. So, I'll definitely be using everything I learned today in my life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the inclusion of neurodivergent youth. I think a big factor of that is to be intentionally inclusive, because a lot of times it's the same old, the neurotypical design system that you have everyone involved in, but there are different things whether people need things that are written or visual, or they need aids, or even the environment, something structured, being aware of noise sensitivity. Say you have like a town hall and you involve everybody, could be overstimulating for some. So if you're going to be inclusive, you need to be aware of that, and also be aware of how people communicate. I mean, what hit me very, very strongly working with neurodivergent people, is I had a couple of patients who were autistic, and, asking them questions, engaging. And when they didn't answer at first, and I figured, okay, I'll ask a different question. And I had to back it up. So I could be asking a question and then sit in silence for 2 minutes or over, and then boom, they come up with something brilliant. So we're used to like fast paced and, you know, certain communication styles, like talking about social cues, and depending on those, and sometimes those could be misread. So it's about creating like the design, the intentional design for the inclusion, not just where it's the same old and like, oh, okay, let's bring in neurodivergent people. And we were talking early, it's really a continuum. So basically we get stuck with autistic or ADHD, you know, to the point where it impacts their lives. But there are so many of us that are along the continuum that we all can benefit from that. And I remember when I first started teaching, it was Howard Gardner, multiple intelligences, all great. But then you're tested with one intelligence. And it's really, I think it can benefit the whole process. And I think that's an important factor. And the other thing is, I think it can be romanticized about, we think of the autistic savant and like, oh, these are great strengths. And yes, they are, they're wonderful strengths, but also take into account the other piece of it and not just romanticize it. That I met this individual and he was about 18. He could do calculus problems, like master's level calculus problems in his head, but he stimmed and overwhelmed by noise. So you have both pieces, and, you know, you can really, you know, look at that and engage him in that way and respect the strengths and help him with the challenges. So I think that's really important. And at one meeting I heard, what I love is, you know, expect, oh, I'm forgetting the word now. It'll come to me later, but yeah, assume competence is huge, because sometimes you see somebody nonverbal and you're kind of like, maybe they don't get it, but they could be communicating on a whole different level, you know, with assisted communication. But I think, you know, ending this, assume competence is key.
Well, touching on that subject, I know that you've been contacted by a parent that have a special needs kid. There is an
Yes.
artist that is older than 18, right? So talk to you guys, and you're able to fit her into the program. Although she is older, I don't know much, because I know the call went straight to you guys. And all I know is because I spoke with the parent briefly and said, you know, my daughter is older than 18. I think she's in her mid-20s or so, but she has special needs and she does a craft, and you know, but she is highly functional, but I need to help her. And I'm sure it was transferred to Allison, and so she's participating. You guys allow them to join.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because I guess, you know, this is part of our mission, not leave anyone behind,
Mhm.
and especially attention to the neurodiverse community. And so it's going to what you're saying. I don't know the levels of anything because it's not my area of expertise. All I know is that they're already encouraging this, and I congratulate you for allowing her to join, but she's still on the 16 to 35 range.
Mhm.
And so I guess it's a beginning, right, for the understanding. But go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that briefly, is even though she has a physical age, there's an age mindset where it's very important to kind of consider circumstances like that, and that's where she fit into.
Definitely.
So we are right into a ball game.
I think one of my biggest takeaways from today was the fact that one of the biggest ways to see the results you want is not sitting around and waiting. You realize that even though you were shy, you needed to be the one to actively lead the research of your technology, and owning the company itself. So I think it's a very important message, not to sit around and expect someone else to do it for you, but to do it yourself. Be the change you want to see in the world. And one of my favorite quotes by Marcus Aurelius, he says, "Waste not time thinking of what a good man should be, and be one." I think that's a mindset that I believe everyone here today collectively agrees on.
Well, for me, I guess it was very good to share and to learn more about the youngest generation. Definitely something that I believe now that I'm also a mother. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I think that is the word that I want her to live is the word that people they don't need to get overwhelmed about their age. They need to understand that even though you can be 5 years old or 11 or 30 or 40, you have something to do. You have potential to do something, to be important, and we need to establish this culture, especially for the older generation, to understand that even though we are older, we've been in the world for longer times and experienced so much more than younger people. But we need to understand that everyone can learn from everyone. I learn every day from my daughter of 3 years old, the way that she sees the world. And this is something that once we have everyone understand that, we could be a much more sustainable world. We could understand that together we are so much more stronger, and everyone can be able to work together with everyone else. We have a team of people that I have people from 18 to people with 50, 55 years old. So we cooperate, we integrate, we are a multidisciplinary team. This is where we can see innovation. This is where we can see the creativity really working. So that's be definitely my takeaway from today.
Yeah, adding on to what Gabby said, I actually came to a very similar takeaway, and that's from what I observed with youthful innovation and in my own life, that if you want to do something, you've got to try to do it. And if you try to do something, something will happen. Because if you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. But if you try, then there's going to be some sort of outcome, and it may be a lesson or maybe progress, but either way, it's moving you forward in your life, and that's very important.
I'd like to thank you again, Alessandro. Appreciate being here. Fantastic opportunity. Thanks again to the UN for putting this on for the Sustainable Development Goals and making this agenda something worth the time and energy. And my closing comment will just be that if you are not a leader, that is perfectly fantastic, because finding valuable followers who will put in the time and energy to follow a leader of quality is as important as any individual leading themselves. So go out and find your leader and follow them and help that vision come into reality rather than sitting around waiting to have your own vision. Followership is a fantastic thing to practice, and the world needs more of it. I'll leave it there.
Well, I think following on to that, I think that what we've seen today are a set of young leaders who are demonstrating what youth can do. And in these challenging times overall around the world, I think it's a very positive and inspiring thing to see people truly showing that leadership shine through. And I think that some of the things that we've seen here that can be examples for others are, again, that sort of endless optimism and the endless curiosity that helps us identify problems that need to be addressed, and then find ways to do them, to overcome those challenges that are along the way, and to be creative and to be persistent and to be determined to get through to that. And I think the other piece that may not have been as directly mentioned is really, it requires active participation. And good things don't tend to just come to those who sit on their couch. Sometimes they do, but when you see the opportunities, when you see the gaps around you, really trying to think them through, really trying to, and again, not everybody can be the leader, but then find a leader around you and align with a cause that matters to you and go and do something about it. We're all on this planet together, and we all need to contribute and to give to each other, and to make sure that that others have basic human rights, that others have opportunities, that others have the benefit of the things that we as leaders and entrepreneurs are able to bring forward.
Well, thank you very much, Tom, Bobby, everyone. It is a tremendous pleasure and an honor to have you all here. The youth, of course, is fabulous. Just to look and see how dedicated you are. We have 3 levels here, right? So Gabby is just starting, Allison is in the middle, and then Anna is already facing the challenges of growth and expansion. And I believe that if we keep this going, like Tom was saying before, you have more of this dialogue, engage more of our youth, of your friends and the individuals that are committed to, putting their dent in the universe. And that's how Hunt Hill Farm expects to fulfill that space, is to actually provide this space, provide access to, so you can bring your ideas, try to bring them to fruition, be the place where you can gather and organize with your friends, with other youth, build your power. And I feel extremely honored, and being accredited by the United Nations Economic and Social Council for us is a tremendous a privilege that also allows us to take what we do here and share every year and beyond that with the youth globally, through the videos, through the reports, through the information and the projects, because there will be youth forever. And I think that the UN should just keep pushing through this 2030 agenda, to the 2045 agenda, to the 2060 agenda, while youth should continue to be the focus, because we still have a long way to go. As I said, it's a beautiful concept. It's very easy. Nothing's being reinvented. They are just simple guidelines. I don't see anyone anywhere in any kind of belief or belief system or community that would be against eradication of hunger, good education, health, partnerships, so on and so forth. What we need to do is to create more noise, create more awareness, and be vocal about your rights, the opportunities. And if, politicians, businesses, anyone that having their mission that, support the youth, don't leave anyone behind, do this and that, it sounds beautiful. But you have to bring them to the plate and say, you said this, you're committed to that, and here we are. Can you extend that to us? Can you make it happen today? The more you come together, the more you voice your needs, your opinions, and your goals, so they can understand, and not all 16-year-olds are the same. Not all 35-year-olds are the same either. But we are all facing the same challenges at one moment or another. And I want to thank you all for actually being here, participating, supporting us. I love to see the continuation of this growth. As I said, Alice has been with us since 2022, right? When we were 13 years old. And seeing you now, choosing which college you're going to go, how dedicated you are, what you want to do. And I want to see more of that. I want to see Gabi doing that. I love to see Anna finding the solutions to her problems and taking this amazing product and concept globally. Like, you're already in a few countries, so just have to make sure that maybe we can help you find alternatives and tools that can lead you that way. And I want to thank everybody that is online, is watching, is here. This video, as I said, as well as the report of what we spoke today, and your suggestions, they will all be listed on a report. You all receive it, and will be available for download from the United Nations website. And we have to keep pushing. We have to keep making that noise, so people that have the ability to help and support, they can hear you and go, oh, because there are amazing people out there. Yeah, amazing people, like Frank, like Tom, like Bobby, Stephanie. We're all here committed to help you. And I want you to see Huntsville Farm, the silo, our infrastructure, and everything that we have as an available tool that can help you achieve your goal, achieve your dream. We won't leave anyone behind. And thank you for accommodating the special needs girl that I think will be very meaningful to her life to be part of something like this. And we hope to other parents with other kids will reach out to you and say, can I include my kid too? So thank you very much. We are ending here the Igniting Change Through Youth Social Entrepreneurship side event of the United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum 2026. And we'll be back for 2027. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And positive vibrations always. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I was still live now and now. Then